Is it really the year of good video game adaptations? Maybe. Let's talk about it. Well, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Gran Turismo, the newest film from director Neil Blomkamp. So, in this based on true story, which is about a young kid named Jan Martinborough, who of course is played by Archie Madekwe in this film. This story, which is insane to believe, but apparently it's true, is about a young kid who basically gets recruited because of his skills at Gran Turismo, the PlayStation game, to basically attend this thing called GT Academy. And in the process, Nissan and a couple other individuals offered them a chance to become real life sports drivers, in like the Europe circuits, the German circuits, and stuff like that. And so in the process, this kid who was a laughingstock at first through the circuit ends up becoming a respectable driver and actually places third in the very popular, well respected 24 Hours of Le Mans, and therefore he ended up gaining a lot of notoriety. He unfortunately was dealing with some situations like a death of a driver and stuff like that. But this is a story. This is a film version of what this kid went through and how he became the kind of respectable driver that he became well known for. And so that's a very interesting thing to think about because, most of the time when it comes to video game movies or video game stories, you look at stuff like Twisted Metal or you look at stuff like Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat, they mainly focus on the actual video game itself, like the characters inside the video game. So when they decided to do Gran Turismo, we all thought that's really weird. We already had Need for Speed that didn't work out very well. But when this story came out that I didn't know anything about until at the time about this young kid who got a chance to be part of the sports car world circuit and stuff like that, that actually lifted my eyes a little bit, lifted my ears because it's like, that's a very interesting story to tell. You take the video game franchise and you add in the mixture of what this kid did. And so, yeah, I mean, I was all kind of about it. What did I think it was going to be very good? No, not really, but it makes it for, a much more unique experience. And unlike, just doing a Gran Turismo movie and stuff like that. And so they brought in Neil Blomkamp, who, of course, did District 9 and, of course, stuff like Chappie and Elysium and stuff like that. And I feel like, it was an interesting choice for a director. And then, of course, they bring in David Harbour, who's coming off, of course, of Stranger Things. Bring in Orlando Bloom, Djimon, Hounsou, and stuff like that. It just, I didn't know where this movie was going to go. It felt like it was going to be an interesting movie, but it was coming out in August. It's just, who knows what these movies are going to represent. And once again, it is still based kind of off the video game. So there is going to be, added placements with PlayStation and Gran Turismo and stuff like that. So who knows? Who knows where this film is going to lie? So, and my overall honest review of this movie is I really enjoyed it. I think the action and the car sequences and stuff like that are really good. I think the use of drones that they use in this movie is absolutely wonderfully done. A lot better than what Michael Bay did in Ambulance. And I think Neil Blomkamp as a action director, a way of getting into the kinetic energy of the film itself, really works for this film. It really does. It makes it feel interesting. You feel like you're in the action. It feels like it's really well produced, very slick, very well shot. It's a very good looking movie. My main problem, honestly, with this movie is just kind of the storytelling, to be fairly honest. It has to, in about 2 hours and 15 minutes, go from a year span or a year and a half span of this kid being a Gran Turismo phenom in a lot of respects to him eventually winning Le Mans. Eventually him going on to be like kind of a inspiration for a lot of kids and stuff like that. And so therefore I may be the only one that believes this, but unlike, with Twisted Metal, which I think should have been a film franchise, I honestly think that this would have worked a lot better as a TV series, or at least a limited TV series. I think the problem with this series is it takes characters and uses them to really quick effect. And what I mean by that is you get Orlando Bloom in this story. He's the guy that's doing the whole sponsorship, getting Nissan on board and all that stuff. And he's kind of quickly thrust in there, and he kind of disappears and reappears, and he's not really used to full effect. And it's the same thing with David Harbour. As much as I like David Harbour in this movie, I think if you give him a little bit more spread when it comes to his story and kind of his journey throughout the story, I think it's the same thing with the GT Academy, where I think there's just not enough spent time with that, where I feel like they could have done a couple episodes. You can only, I mean, to be fair, do like 6-episode TV series of the Gran Turismo like world that this is. And I think it would have been much more interesting and much more fleshed out and much more engaging than what we got in this movie, because you have to spend so little time and you have to be so quick about your story edits and your storytelling and what Neil Blomkamp has to do with his writers and stuff like that, and how the characters have to adjust and so on and so forth, that there are pieces and parts that are just kind of thrown by the wayside or just feel kind of empty, where I wanted so much more out of it. There's so much that they could have done with the GT Academy by itself that is completely thrown by the wayside. You know, for instance, like the people that he either befriends or the people that, you know, are his kind of enemy slights in the GT Academy. That stuff just kind of is wasted a little bit, and then some of the characters come back later on, and it feels like, well, you didn't really give us much depth to those characters, so it's kind of a very surface level stuff. And then there's Djimon Hounsou in this film, who plays the father of Martinborough, who I like. Djimon Hounsou, I think he's a very talented actor, but he's really given nothing to do in this film, which is a huge problem. And what I mean by that is he's supposed to be that father who, you know, we have the phenom who the father doesn't really believe in, and then of course believes him at the end. But that story arc is so kind of like left behind, and there's just not much depth there. There's not much detail. And then it almost feels wasted. Djimon Hounsou feels really wasted in this movie, and he needs a much more stronger arc for Jan to feel some sympathy at the end of his story. And I don't know. That's this movie's main problem. I mean, even David Harbour, who is working for one of the kind of antagonists of this movie, and then eventually comes over. I love David Harbour, and I think he's a very talented actor, but once again, his character doesn't really get a lot of stuff or get a lot of dimension until like halfway through this movie, and just kind of thrown in there. It's just this movie in general. It's moving too quickly. It's moving in too many parts. And it's not letting anything breathe. And therefore, if they'd done like a 6 or 7 episode series of this movie, of this world, I think it would have been a much more interesting, much more detailed look into what this story is, which is a really fascinating one if you think about it. I mean, you're getting into like an individual who basically goes into a very dangerous world of like car racing and stuff like that. And I just think there could have been more. There's a lot of depth that is in this film, especially when he becomes the driver and he starts working on the circuit and stuff like that, and you watch kind of how the story plays out. But it needed so much more. It needed so much more time than it was given. It needed so much more style and substance than it was given. And once again, it's not a bad movie. It's entertaining for, you know, 135, 140 minutes or whatever it is, but it just needed more. It really did. I feel like Neil Blomkamp needed more and just wasn't given enough for what he needed. And I think it could have been a 4-hour movie and still not been justified in what it's doing. With that said, it's very much a Neil Blomkamp film. He knows how to shoot action and style, like I said, and it definitely does win on that portrayal. And it's a fun movie. It really is. I mean, there's no reason this film should work, and it really does just on the material alone. And you know, it has a great soundtrack. It has, you know, great callbacks to the video game franchise itself. I do think it's funny that this is a movie that takes place in like 2015 or 16, and it's using the PS5 version of Gran Turismo, which that's more of a nerdy thing. You won't recognize it if you don't know what I'm talking about. But bringing it into like today's modern audience, but having been in the past, it's a little bit of a, hey, we're gonna show off the PlayStation 5, but it is a Sony PlayStation movie, so they do what they do. It's whatever. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. That is my take on Gran Turismo. As I always say in the comments below, let me know what you think of this movie. What is your favorite video game adaptation at this point? Are you looking forward to this movie? As I always say, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome, hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.